Good morning, good morning. It's Helen. I'm back in my own space. I'm back in my own house in France, welcoming another guest to Conversations with Compassion this morning. If you don't know me, if you're new to watching these, if you're new to my business page or my YouTube or in my group, I'm Helen Ferguson. I'm a specialist trauma therapist and coach, helping entrepreneurial, professional, high-performing women emotionally recover from trauma, challenging life experiences and emotional overwhelm so that they can stand confidently in their self-belief, their self-worth and their self-acceptance. And I started Conversations with Compassion this year and I've had some amazing guests and continue to do so because I was constantly hearing from clients, from women that started to work with me, that self-compassion is self-indulgent, it's egotistical, it's narcissistic, it's lazy, it's this, it's that. The really kind of negative connotations around what compassion and self-compassion is. So I set Conversations with Compassion up because I wanted to inspire people and I wanted to bring women into these conversations that could share their inspirational stories and their inspirational experiences. So this morning, I am hugely excited to have this guest this morning. I thoroughly enjoyed connecting with her to discuss her being on the show, and that time has gone massively quickly. So this morning we have Prash with us, and Prash is a Beyond Consciousness coach and a founder, and I can't remember the other word, but you're the founder, Prash, of the Single Parent Academy.
Yes.
So that's where I'm gonna hand over to you for you to introduce yourself, because you will do a much better job of it than me.
Hi, Helen. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. Like Helen said, we talked about me coming on this show ages ago. It feels like time. For me, for some reason, it feels like it was August and it's October. I don't know where September went. Really, I have no idea where September went. But like Helen said, I'm a Beyond Consciousness coach and I'm a movement analysis practitioner. I generally work exclusively with single parents, mainly single moms, because my life experience has brought me to where I am today. And because I'm a single mom, and it taught me so much about what goes wrong and what goes right and what to do and what not to do, that I decided, even though I was a coach working with almost everybody, I decided no, single moms and single parents mainly need someone out there who can kind of show them the way. It's everything, every life, every journey, every person, every breakup is different. But having said that, there are certain things, certain elements that are so common that if you manage to go around them, it's so much easier to then navigate the rest of the life. And that's what I do.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, like you say, everybody's journey is different around that, but actually and certainly my experience, equally is that, the actual life experience is unique to them, but the guidance that you provide that is inspirational to them, and they each will get something different from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always been my experience that even though we say, oh, everybody's different, everybody's unique, if you think about it, the fears they feel, the emotions they come up with, even whether it's happy or sad emotions, it doesn't matter. Basically, as a human being, we are all made up of the same stuff. It comes out a little bit differently here, a little bit differently there. Maybe some people will be more aggressive, some more hide in their shell. But at the end of the day, the emotion that builds us all up is the same. And once you know how to navigate the root emotion, you're set.
Yes, absolutely. Which leads me on to my first. I don't have a set load of questions, but I do like to start with asking, what self-compassion means for you, because you saw me, when I when I, in different groups, I kind of said, this is what I'm doing. Would anybody like to come and be a guest? And you were straight away there saying, yes, I would like to, because, I put the description about what it was about, what the focus was. So there's an interest, there's a core interest there that you have around compassion and self-compassion to want to come and have this conversation. So what would you say self-compassion means for you?
For me, self-compassion, literally, and I know it sounds so cliche and people will be like, but it's life. Because without the compassion I showed myself when I had to, initially I wasn't, and then it led me down a completely different path. But when all of a sudden, when I took a step back and realized, look, if I don't love myself, if I'm not compassionate towards myself, there is nobody else doing it for me. Yes, I love my daughter. I will die for her. I'll do anything for her. But when the time comes, who is doing it for me then? If I don't love me, why should anybody else even bother with me? That's what self-compassion means to me. To understand that I am a human being. I will make mistakes. I have made mistakes. I have made major mistakes. But having said that, if I stick with just that, oh, I've made mistakes, I'm a horrible person, that took me down a completely wrong, I wouldn't say use the word wrong, but it was such a dark, dingy path I went down, because I was literally along that lines of, you know what, I have no idea what I'm doing in life. I'm a failure. I'm this many years old. How old was I when it all happened? I was 30, 31. And I'm like, I'm this old and my 10 years of marriage has completely broken down. I'm a nobody. So it took me down that path of I was getting ready to end my life. It was that bad. And the only thing that brought me back up was the fact that, okay, I've made mistakes, but let me love myself for who I am. Let me learn from these mistakes. Let me allow myself to be. Nobody else is around me, holding me, hugging me, telling me, Prash, it's going to be all right. Let me say it to myself. And that one part, that little bit of me saying to myself, I love you for who you are, is what brought me out of all of that and brought me where I am today. So I know I don't mean it as a cliche, or I don't mean it as sounds such a thing, but self-compassion saved my life. And that's what it is for me.
Gosh. I've actually got a little bit emotional about that. Self-compassion means so much to so many different people and in different ways, but to hear it the way that you've described it is absolutely the way that I think about it.
Yeah.
The way that I think about it when I'm working with anyone, when I think about it for myself, because I also, went through my own trauma and had to actually peel back the layers of the story, the narrative that had wrapped itself around me, in order to really show that compassion to myself. So to hear you say it in a way that absolutely resonates with the way that I think about it and the way that I want people to think about it too is brilliant, is amazing. I can't actually find the right adjective, but but because you're right, it is about life. It is about accepting all parts of yourself, all the parts that that I hate the terms positive and negative, but people resonate, people kind of link in with those terms, but the ability to say, because some of the words that you were using about yourself were negative, they were limited, they were harsh towards yourself, and despite that and in spite of that, you were able to say, I've got to show myself this kind of love, this kind of compassion, in order for me to survive.
Yes, it definitely. So I don't think there are a lot of people out there, especially after a certain age group, even younger kids, to be fair, that you'll go out and they haven't experienced trauma in one form or another. Trauma doesn't have to be a massive, oh, my house burned down and I was homeless kind of trauma. It can be minor traumas as well. It can be just a trauma of you were a kid, You wanted your mom to be there at a sports event and she
And
couldn't.
she was, yeah.
Everybody was with their moms hugging and you couldn't. See, these things become trauma as well. But because we all go, it's a part and parcel of our life. We have the valleys and we have the peaks. So whenever we are in that deep valley, that deep dark valley, we need to understand that it's us who will bring us up. There will be no matter how many people surround you. I hope and I really pray that you are blessed and there are people surrounding you, loving you, supporting you. But if you don't love, support, and surround yourself, no matter how hard the other person's trying to pull you and push you to bring you out of that valley, you're never going to come out of it, because it starts with you. It starts with you thinking, I deserve better than this. It starts with you thinking, I need to love me, so that the other person who's giving me the hand to come out of this valley, because they're waiting to love me, will only do it. It comes a time, right? If you give up and you say, I don't care, I can't be bothered, the people around you will be like, okay, we tried.
We
How
tried.
much more do you want us to try now?
Yeah.
So that's the massive lesson I learned when I went through certain things in life. I didn't even have so many people surrounding me. I had to go out and find them. But even if you are one of the lucky ones, one of the blessed ones who has all these people surrounding, they will give up if you don't start showing compassion to yourself.
Because, like, as you say, there's only so much people can do.
Yeah.
And if we're resisting that as well, and that resistance comes from not showing ourselves compassion and acceptance for where we are and what we're struggling with, but equally the words that we're saying to ourselves, the way that we are thinking, and it is hugely difficult. I mean, usually the women that come to me, they've had some kind of therapy before that has either worked minimally in that moment, or hasn't felt like a transformation for them. I'm very clear, I don't provide a transformation. I help women discover their real selves. I bring them to a place of safety within themselves, and that place of safety is surrounded by self-compassion. And when people aren't able to, so when women first come to me, they've kind of tried everything else. They've got to a point of having ignored what they need through fear. It's usually through fear that they've ignored they've ignored themselves. And I've actually had women come to me who have not thought that they needed it for themselves, but thought that they needed the work for somebody else. And I've sat and listened and then said, no, actually, I believe it's you that needs this work. And there's like, oh, well, I've not been through anything. And then we open up. And I'm like, because your point is absolutely right. There are different types of trauma. There are type 1, type 2, intergenerational, and what we call little t traumas. Little t does make them sound as though they're less important, so I don't particularly like the phrase, but that's what they're described as, little t traumas. They are the daily things that happen that have actually quite a magnifying effect on us. And so being able to recognize self-compassion and recognize what we need within ourselves, so that then we can also accept the help from other people and accept the hug of compassion from other people, is massively important. Because if we don't, we will resist that compassion towards ourselves from others.
Yeah, what you call little t traumas, I call them micro traumas. They call them like micro traumas. But I remember reading a book one day, and then the way the micro trauma was explained blew me away. So what they said is, if you can think of, or if you can imagine, you just left home, it's early in the morning, you've left home, you've walked out the door, and it's so foggy. It's so foggy that if you put your hand across like this, you can't see your hands. It's that foggy. And then they asked the question, now can you tell us how much water do you think you will need to create a fog that thick? it's less than half of this glass of water will create that fog. So that's how microtrauma works. That little tiny little things that happened one day, maybe your husband said something and you just took it, didn't say anything back, but you didn't actually like it, it got stored. Something happened, it got stored. We went to, so all that storage, when those little tiny, when they burst out, they become the bigger, they have more effect on us than the bigger traumas actually do. Because what happens when something massive happens is you're kind of taken aback, you're shook, but you know there is a reason why this big thing happened, and you will find
the reason.
But when it's the smaller ones, you're not paying attention, and that's when it makes a bigger and a major impact on your life. And like you said, and also other thing, when you said, I actually loved it when you said, oh, when they come to me, I tell them I don't provide them transformation, I make them meet the real them. I think that's the biggest transformation anyone can ever ask for, because we've all lost touch with our real selves, because we've all forgotten how to love ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. And we've often forgotten who we actually are.
Yeah, we have.
We have somebody saying, hello, ladies, Facebook user. Just pop your name, because I haven't got my phone to be able to see who the Facebook user is, because if you haven't given StreamYard permission, then I'm not able to see the name. So it is lovely that you're here, Facebook user, but just give us a little message about, it's Sarah. Hi, it's Sarah. It's Sarah Thomas. It's lovely to have you here, Sarah. What was I saying?
Talking about massive traumas.
We were talking about massive traumas. That if, there are the layers, that the thing with the larger traumas, if you like, the type 1, type 2, the intergenerational, there's something quite tangible about them. You can see them. You can recognize that will have had an effect on you.
Yes.
The ones that are less visible are the ones that, when they're layered up and there's other aspects going on top, and then we might also have things like lack of self-esteem, lack of self-worth, all of the things that go alongside that too. It's then a bit of a surprise when you turn around to somebody, when I have to turn around to women and say, you do realize that what you're experiencing is a trauma response to these situations that you've had. So it's then kind of like, oh, really? I didn't think I'd gone through trauma, because there is a bit of a stigma around the word trauma, to be honest, as well.
Yes.
And I know that I've been challenged on Instagram, having used the word trauma. I mean, I'm a trauma therapist. I have been a trauma therapist for over 22 years. But there was a young lady, actually, and I then had a really lovely conversation with her afterwards. But she challenged me on Instagram about the word trauma and I shouldn't be using it because it was stigmatizing, and that was her experience in her education, because she's in university, not in the UK, and so I then just messaged her and said, let's have a conversation about this, because clearly you're in a situation where your pain isn't being understood. Yeah. So what you're experiencing is, then when you see it on Instagram or you see it on social media, it's triggering that. It's triggering that pain, that you're not being understood. That it's because actually, if we continue to use the word trauma and we help people understand it, and we help people understand the word self-compassion and compassion and all of the things that go along with emotional healing and recovery, then we are destigmatizing it.
Yes.
If we stop using it, then
I do feel like it's exactly like the mental health, isn't it? It was so stigmatized. It was but now we're talking more about it. We're learning more about it. We're educating ourselves. We're educating others. So slowly that stigma, even though it's still there, it's slowly releasing itself. We are more open about it. And the same thing goes for the word trauma as well, because I think it's the word as well, because trauma sounds so big. So anytime, I think, if you just ask me to imagine trauma, it feels like a car crash. But it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be, no. And I remember being when I managed, I used to manage child and adolescent mental health in the southwest in the UK for the 0 to 18 service and looked after children. And one of the things that it was a collective there were lots of clinicians that actually were on board with this, and it became a collective. So it was social services, it was universal services, it was children's mental health, and we started to create this program of destigmatizing mental health in that area, and help children got on board with that. They created articles, they created posters. So it really, we have to be part of the change, and we have to be part of the safety that says this word trauma, this phrase self-compassion, this phrase self-acceptance, there is nothing stigmatizing about them. What they do is they help guide us to what we need, and that's the important message.
Yes. I've gone through a phase in my life when I talked about, I can't do a certain thing because it doesn't fit in with my routine, or it's like this, that. I've had people call, oh, you're always thinking about yourself, you're selfish. And that that also stigmatizes the self-compassion. But I'd had to learn that, okay, I need to be compassionate towards myself. That person doesn't understand it, which means they have no idea what self-compassion is.
No.
And
that's, because self-compassion is also about your values and your boundaries. It's about saying, it's about protecting, it's about safety, it's about protection, it's about boundaries, it's about values. It's much more complicated than people think. Because I often get the question, and I'm sorry, Sarah's saying, I'm much happier now that I realized I've suffered trauma and that I could be helped by you. Mine and the boys have a much better life since meeting you, Helen Ferguson. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Don't make me cry, Sarah. You know how it happens. It was, Sarah, an absolute pleasure to help you and your boys. And so, but one of the things that I experience as a therapist is usually, and Sarah will probably agree with me on this one, usually about session 2, I get kind of frustrated clients because they're like, why am I looking at self-compassion? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing? And I'm like, trust the process, trust me, there's a good reason. Then about halfway through, because I work with people for 3 months, nobody generally needs to work with me beyond that point. But midway through is when there's a little light bulb that goes on and they go, got it now. Absolutely got it, because it's about me. And the tools and the skills within myself to be able to provide myself with the safety, to provide myself with a healing, because self-compassion is the pathway to emotional healing, and that extension of compassion towards themselves. There's this massive light bulb that goes on. So it's a lovely thing to see. It's a lovely thing to see.
Yes, I love it when people sometimes, even with me, like single parents, single moms, come and say, oh, I'm not really bothered about me, I'm okay, I need to make sure my kid is okay. It happened to me as well. When I had my very first light bulb moment was the time when my daughter came to me one day, and it was in the morning, and she says to me, Mama, I can't breathe. But what do you mean you can't breathe? Oh my God, let's make an appointment. Made an appointment with the GP, took her into the GP, and then all of a sudden, he's asking her questions, obviously leading questions and everything. And I'm sat there going, oh my God, she was having a panic attack. It was nothing to do with the physical, it was the emotional. And as he said it, I said it at the same time. And we came home, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, oh my God, I need to make sure she's okay. She was only 8 at that time. I'm like, she's only 8 years old. She's going through panic attack, having a nervous breakdown, having all of these anxiety attacks. I'm like, my focus was, I need to help her, without realizing that she was going through all of that because of what I was going through.
Yeah.
She was looking at me. She was kind of not mirroring me per se, but she was looking at me and thinking, oh my God, this world is a big, angry, scary, dark place, and I'm going to have to. That's when I literally stopped looking at her, stopped worrying about her. And then I said to myself, I need to work on me. I can't help it. None of us, no matter how hard we try, we can't help anybody else until and unless we've helped ourselves. That has been my experience throughout this life. That, and when the moment I decided I need to start working on me, I need to change my attitude towards life, I need to change my attitude towards my ex-husband and the way I've been dealing with him. I need to change my attitude towards, oh, I'm such a victim, everything goes wrong in my life. When all of a sudden I got that, I then went into this, I went crazy with self-development and personal development side of things. And a year later, I looked back and I saw a different girl standing next to me. She never went through any of it. She didn't do any sessions with me. She didn't go to a therapist. She didn't take any anxiety tablets, nothing. All that I did was I said, the only way I can change her perspective of life, only way I can change her pathway is if I change myself, if I work on me, if I showed to her that I love me and I'm deserving, she will love herself and knows that she is deserving. And that's exactly what happened. So for anybody sat there thinking, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm an adult. I'm okay to deal with it. Anything life throws at me, I'll deal with it." But my kid is struggling. I need to look at my kid. Something's happening there. I don't know how to help them. Please move the mirror away from your kid. Look at yourself in the mirror and see what is it that you're doing to yourself. You don't even realize what you're doing to yourself. That is just trickling down onto them, and that's always the case.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, because like I said to you, the amount of times that I have had women come to me. I occasionally work with men. They filter through, the pink branding and the stuff. But there is but I occasionally work with men, but it's women that obviously come to me, and sometimes because I used to work with children. And occasionally I still will work with children, but I will only work with them in the room. So they have to be kind of local. I won't work with them online. But they'll come to me and say, well, my child has got this problem, my child has got that problem, and I'm like, so I said, well, let's have a conversation about where that might have come from, what's been happening, what's the circumstances. And literally 99.9% of the time, I'm turning around and saying, the work is with you, not with your children. And that can be a bit of a surprise. There can be a bit of resistance to that, but at the same time, I'm also able to explain it very, very coherently that that's the work that needs to be done. But it's an important message that you've just given people, Prash, that to turn the mirror. Turn the mirror onto what's happening for you, where you are, what you've experienced, how you might be struggling, how you might be having your own difficulties, but of really fearful of acknowledging those, because it will be fear that stops that. And be able to say to yourself, what do I need to do for me? So that if I'm doing for me, then I'm giving a very different message. I'm giving a very different experience. I'm giving a very different understanding for my children of how we can manage the world and how we can manage ourselves and look after ourselves.
Yes, it's 100% truth. There's no other way about it. Of course, all our kids are unique. They're all different. So you might have 3 kids and you say something and all 3 of them will take it differently. But having said that, when all 3 of them are sat there watching you, either saying things to yourself, maybe you're having a conversation and you're talking about yourself, or the thing for me is I realize long time ago. So when my daughter was around 5 years old, I had this thing about, I had a body dysmorphia, and I always used to think, oh my God, my skin is so ugly. So I used to refuse to leave the house without full face of makeup on. And then I remember one day standing in front of the mirror and looking at myself going, oh, does this look okay? And my daughter looked at me and goes, Mama, you know you're beautiful, you're not fat. I never used the word fat ever.
Right.
But she was 5. So that means just by looking at me behaving around myself, there's no words, there's no communication going on. She picked up on the energy that my mom thinks she's ugly and she's fat, and that's why she does all these things. That was like a shock for me. I'm like, but Shrey, I never said I'm fat. And she goes to me, but you keep looking at yourself. You look beautiful, mommy. Then I realized after a little while, she started doing similar things. Like she would put a pair of clothes on. She'd look. I'm like, no, that's how it goes. We don't have to talk. We might turn around and say, oh, but I never say to my kid this, that, and center. But you know what? You don't have to say it. That's what they pick up on, the energy that you're emanating, the way you're dealing with yourself. There's no need for words. Words are obsolete. Words are not even important.
No, it's the behavior towards yourself.
Yes. They pick up on it so quickly, and especially it's human nature. We pick up on the negative really quickly. Hence the reason why when you might go through an entire day where everybody complimented you, it was the best day and it flowed beautifully, and one person will say one thing that you don't like. It's a criticism, and you hold on to that criticism for days on end. You forget what everybody else said. Why? Because we pick on the negative really quickly.
And it can be years on end.
Yes.
It can be years on end.
I still remember something some people said to me. I don't even remember the person's name, but I remember what they said to me. Was it a positive thing? No, it was a negative thing they said to me.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We wrap I always describe it as we kind of wrap this narrative around ourselves that is the words and the behavior of other people.
Yes.
And my job and self-compassion's job and your job actually is what we do is we help unravel that narrative so that actually what happens is the true story, which is ourselves, is able to shine through, is able to come through, rather than the story, the narrative that has been wrapped around it's like a ribbon, it's like, I don't mean a mummified, but it's like a ribbon. It wraps itself around, and it can eventually feel quite protective, paradoxically protective, because gosh, it's what we know, it's what we understand, it feels safe. Then we start to unravel that, and that's the bit that then starts to feel unsafe. It's like, oh no, hang on, who am I? What does this? What you're asking me to do? What? You're asking me to focus on me, but actually what we do is, and what we need to do, and it's what I've done, and it's certainly by the sounds of it what you've done, is unraveled that narrative, so that you're able to say, this is me, this is who I am, this is how I need to look after myself, this is how important I am, and this is how I want my life to be.
Yes. What I do is I invite to everybody who's listening to this today, or whenever you guys listen to it, when you have a chance, just try this little experiment and see how much you don't know yourself and how much you don't look at yourself. Sit in front of a mirror, just in the quiet, and look at yourself in the eye for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That's it. No more. Just 5 minutes. Sit there in quiet. Do you know how uncomfortable you feel when you're actually keeping an eye contact with yourself? Why? Because you're so used to avoiding the feeling that then surfaces from doing that. But you have to do it to get to that bit of what is it that's making you unhappy, or what is it that's making you sad, and what is it that you're, to not sound too much of a cuckoo or voodoo or whatever. It's that woo woo, that feel of what is it that your soul's looking for. When was the last time you looked at yourself in the mirror and looked at yourself? Your eyes, just look into your eyes and see what is it. I've done this so many times. I sit in front of the mirror, I will look at myself in the eye, I let the thoughts come in, and all of a sudden I'm looking at myself and I've got tears rolling down my eyes, because all of a sudden I feel seen.
Yes.
You don't see you. Even when you're looking at the picture, you're quickly looking, going, oh, that doesn't look nice, delete it. look into your eyes. They always say the eyes is the way, is your mirror to your soul.
Yeah.
We don't see ourselves.
And I think one of the things I was going to ask earlier was, what's the tip? But actually, that's a beautiful thing for you to ask people to do, to invite them into seeing themselves.
Yeah.
And it's certainly an important process of acknowledging and acceptance and awareness that asks people, invites them to truly look at themselves, see themselves, instead of hiding from themselves. And I think, in fact, I can't think of a better way actually to end this conversation than by you having invited people to do that. Because
I will definitely say, I'm sure there are some of you who walked on fire, some of you who walked on glass and everything else. I promise you. And if you don't find it that way, please get in contact with Helen, and she will tell me that it will be one of the most difficult things you've ever done in your life. Ever in your life. And I kid you not. You've forgotten to see. You look at yourself, but you don't see yourself.
You don't see yourself. So inviting people to see themselves. I love that, Prash, and I can't thank you enough for that, for being able to bring that to this conversation, and to bring everything that you've brought to this conversation today, and shared, very deeply the importance of compassion and self-compassion to you in your life, and how it has transformed your life. So how do people find you if they're wanting to learn more about you and what you do? Where's the best place for them to find you?
The easiest and the most active I'm at is Instagram, Single Parents Academy. When you search for it, you'll find me anyway. It's instagram.com, Single Parents Academy. If you follow Helen, we follow each other, so I'm sure you'll find me there as well. I do have a Facebook page. I don't have a group. I have a Facebook page, but I'm not as active in there because I'm more into Instagram for some reason. But that's it.
Perfect. And Sarah is saying, that was so lovely. Thank you both.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome, Sarah. I know that people will watch this on replay later, and I will share with you, Prash, the comments that come in via YouTube as well. So it has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation, Prash. Thank you so much for taking the time out and being with us this morning. It has been an emotional journey for me listening to you too. So thank you for your sensitivity actually in sharing your experience and the inspiration I know that people will have from that. So thank you for doing that. And
thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure. I've looked forward to this since the day, I think, a year ago.
It feels like a year ago, yeah.
I've been looking forward to this. It has been incredible. Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing what you do, Helen. It's just incredible. So thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Have a compassion-filled day.
You too. Take care.